Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very good evening. I'm Muiz Datuk Paduka Haji Adnan. Tonight in Primetime Asia, the European Union delivers some of the strongest criticism yet of China's human rights record, calling the televised broadcast of confessions by Chinese and European citizens unacceptable. 4 miners who were lifted to safety after being trapped underground for 36 days in a collapsed gypsum mine in East China's Shandong province are currently in stable mental and physical condition. Shanghai Customs intercepted more than 2,000 turtles from smugglers, including some threatened species. And Mexican authorities released video showing the dramatic recapture of infamous kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who is now in prison. Kartini Knox has the details and more.
The European Union last Friday delivered some of its strongest criticism yet of China's human rights record, calling the televised broadcasts of confessions by Chinese and European citizens unacceptable. The comments prompted a rebuke from China, which consistently rejects any criticism of its human rights record. In a statement on its website, the 28-member bloc's delegation to China said the disappearance of several Hong Kong booksellers, including a British and a Swedish passport holder, was part of a worrying trend. China this week expelled Peter Dahlin, a Swedish national who was taken into custody this month on suspicion of acts detrimental to the country's national security, after rights groups criticised his televised confession, saying it appeared to have been made under duress. 2 days earlier, naturalised Swedish citizen Gui Minhai, who had vanished in October in Thailand, appeared on Chinese state television, saying he had surrendered to authorities over a fatal drink-driving offence more than a decade ago. Gui's colleague, Li Bo, a dual Hong Kong and British passport holder, vanished in late December amid widespread speculation that Chinese authorities may have abducted him. Li's wife has said he's assisting in an investigation in the capacity of a witness in the mainland. The EU said the case has called into question China's respect for the rule of law and for its international human rights obligations, not least the freedom of speech. Amnesty International researcher William Nee said the international community needed to be more vocal in its opposition to the practice. China's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying said they opposed foreign delegations making statements with irresponsible criticism about China's handling of judicial matters, adding that China did not accept international double standards. She also said that the EU or other countries should respect China's judicial sovereignty and independence, adding that for some matters they could show that they care but cannot place groundless accusations. Critics say a series of recent televised confessions of detained suspects deprive the accused of the right to a fair trial. Chinese authorities have not responded to multiple requests for comment from Reuters, nor have they made any substantial statements explaining Beijing's role in the disappearances nor the fate of the men. China's foreign minister has insisted that Li is first and foremost a Chinese citizen, and sources have told Reuters that efforts by foreign governments to get information on Li and Gui have been met with silence. Four miners who had been lifted to safety on Friday night after being trapped underground for 36 days in a collapsed gypsum mine in East China's Shandong province are currently in stable mental and physical condition. After a series of medical checks and treatment, they were transferred from intensive care units (ICU) to ordinary wards in Pingyi County Public Hospital. 50-year-old Zhao Zicheng, the first miner who was lifted to safety, was the last one to leave the ICU. It's reported that doctors from Pingyi County, Linyi City and Shandong Province had a group consultation on Friday night, and the four miners have had a series of checks of ultrasonic wave and X-rays at the ICU. A total of 29 people were working underground when the gypsum mine collapsed on December 25, 2015. 11 miners narrowly escaped, while one was confirmed dead and 17 others were trapped. On December 30th, 4 of the 17 trapped miners were found alive underground. Snipers from the Chinese People's Liberation Army PLA garrison in Hong Kong have received training despite the heavy rain and bitter cold. Training on rainy days is extremely hard for snipers, said Li Xiu, the instructor. The rain poses a big challenge for a sniper as raindrops blur his vision. It also exerts a negative impact on the body. He will shiver with cold as his body temperature declines rapidly, thus he can't hold the rifle steadily, said the coach. To overcome such difficulty, the snipers have had to receive more adaptability training, according to Li. Battles often take place in rain, so they've had to conduct such training so as to adapt to future war conditions, he added. Shanghai Customs on January 27th said more than 2,000 turtles had been intercepted from smugglers, which includes some threatened species such as the black pond turtles, Amboina box turtles and pig-nosed turtles. On November 19th last year, an international shipping company in Shanghai declared import of 8 boxes of crabs weighing 221 kilograms from Indonesia. Customs staff found the goods suspicious after big data analysis, so they opened the boxes and checked the goods. When they opened the cartons, they found the crabs on the upper layer and a great number of little turtles beneath the crabs. They counted there were more than 2,000 turtles. The smuggled case of turtles has been handed over to the anti-smuggling department for further investigation, and those turtles were sent to specific zoos in Shanghai. The Shanghai Customs handled 1,861 smuggling cases last year, worth 8.56 billion yuan in total. Mexico's government on January 27th released video of the escape, search and recapture of drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, featuring previously unseen footage of the fallen kingpin shortly after his latest arrest. Security video released by Mexico's Attorney General shows grainy footage of a dressed Guzman pacing the room, looking behind the partition wall by his shower, sitting on his bed, then crouching again behind the wall, where he finally disappeared back in July. According to officials, a mile-long tunnel was burrowed right up into his cell. The partition wall in the cell blocked the camera's view of a roughly 50 centimetre or 20-inch by 50 centimetre entrance hole to escape passage. Inside the passageway used for Guzman's latest escape, guards found a motorbike mounted on rails as well as equipment to put air into the tunnel. The escape of Guzman, Mexico's most notorious drug lord, is a major embarrassment for President Enrique Pena Nieto and was the second time the drug kingpin had broken out of prison. Shortly after, Mexican authorities launched the massive manhunt for the kingpin. According to investigators, after Guzman's escape, he was transported in a vehicle to a town in central Querétaro state, where a small plane was waiting to carry him away. The search for Guzman focused on the Sinaloa cartel's stomping grounds of Durango and Sinaloa state. Some 6 months after his escape, Guzman was tracked down to a house in Los Moquis, in his native northwestern state of Sinaloa. Mexican Marines chased the head of the infamous Sinaloa cartel and his chief assassin through a drain and then nabbed him as they tried to flee by car. Security forces had identified a tunnel expert in Guzman's circle who was outfitting houses in Sinaloa, and that helped lead to the drug baron's capture, officials reported. Eventually, Marines caught up with Guzman and made an unscheduled stop waiting for reinforcements at Hotel Du, a love motel on the outskirts of town that rents out rooms for a few hours at a time. Guzman is now back at the Almo Loya prison where he escaped from, but under intensified security measures, which include reducing the number of inmates, quadrupling the number of cameras on the site and moving Guzman randomly, without warning, to different parts of the prison. President Enrique Pena Nieto's government says it plans to extradite Guzman to the United States, where he's wanted on an array of charges, including drug trafficking, but officials have cautioned the process could take anything from 1 to 5 years.
Joaquín Guzmán Loera se cambió de ropa dejando en el lugar el uniforme que usaba dentro del penal. Se calcula que el recorrido dentro del túnel les tomó 19 minutos.
Welcome back. Some small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, from South Korea have already benefited from the tariff reduction under the free trade agreement with China. Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to strongly demand North Korea refrain from launching a satellite its neighbors suspect is a cover for a missile test. Japanese weightlifter Hiromi Miyake expects a bigger fight with herself than with Chinese team at the Rio de Janeiro Summer Olympic Games, saying that China is definitely the strongest competitor by country, but that her biggest rival was within. Hoshinchu, a Japanese startup in southern Japan, has gathered over $500,000 in funding for its new project, Air Bonsai. Also in tonight's Primetime Asia, Indian authorities bury a 9-meter-long bride's whale which washed ashore dead on a beach of Mumbai city. Protesters take to the streets of Lahore to demonstrate against the construction of the country's first metro train line after a Pakistani court ordered works to stop. Severe weather fronts damaged several regions across Australia, including large bushfires that burned through several parts of the state of Tasmania. Kartini Knox has the details.
Some small and medium-sized enterprise or SMEs from South Korea have already benefited from the tariff reduction under the free trade agreement with China. Wisit Innovation and Technology, a Korean-based semiconductor producer with sales volume of 32 billion won in 2015, is one of the beneficiaries. Hwang Ha-young, vice president of the company, said their products are on the list of the second round of tariff cuts that started on January 1, 2016, in accordance with the FTA, so they can benefit from the zero tariff policy. He also expected their products to become more competitive in price in China and lure more Chinese customers. A Korean expert who specializes in FTA affairs said it is the Chinese and Korean small and medium-sized enterprises that will boost the economies of two countries if they're more involved in market competition and development. In the future, the policy will focus on SMEs. Although one company can't create many jobs, the number of SMEs is so huge, said Park Tae-ho, professor of Seoul National University. As the SMEs grow faster, they will definitely create jobs and promote the economy, said the professor. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said on Wednesday he would work with the United States and others to strongly demand that North Korea refrain from a planned satellite launch suspected to be a missile test, calling it a provocative move that threatens the nation's security. Abe said in response to the first question in Parliament, in addition to working closely with other connected parties, Japan would strongly demand North Korea to show self-control to prevent such events. North Korea told UN agencies on Tuesday it planned to launch a satellite as early as next week, a move that could advance the country's long-range missile technology after its fourth nuclear test on January 6th. Japanese Olympic weightlifter Hiromi Miyake, a silver medalist at the 2012 London Olympics, said on Tuesday on the sidelines of a training session in Tokyo that her biggest rival in the run-up to the Rio Games was herself. Hailing from a renowned weightlifting dynasty in Japan, her uncle Yoshinobu took gold at the 1964 and 1968 Games, while her father and coach Yoshiyuki took bronze in 1968. Miyake, 30, has already taken part in 3 of the summer sports extravaganzas. In 2012, competing in the 48-kilogram class, she lost out to China's Wang Mingjuan, who extended a 10-year unbeaten record to lift a combined total of 205 kilograms, beating Miyake by just 8 kilograms. Despite her pedigree, Miyake, who is all of 1.4 meters or 4 foot 9 inches tall, studied piano from childhood before switching to weightlifting after being inspired to compete by the Sydney Olympics in 2000. Even then, she initially wavered between wrestling, judo and weightlifting before deciding to take up the family sport. Miyake currently trains morning and afternoon, with each session lasting several hours, according to her father. Since London, Miyake's goal has been to improve her form, and she says she now feels this starting to come together. With only 6 months left until the Games, it's now a matter of making every day count. Even so, she acknowledges that competing with China could be tough, given that training in China starts early and prospective athletes are carefully selected from a large population pool. There are also inevitable age differences. Facing her 4th Olympics, Miyake's competitive spirit remains undaunted. Hoshinshu, a Japanese startup in southern Japan, has gathered over $500,000 in funding for its new project, Air Bonsai. The cultivation of the miniature plant is an ancient Japanese botanical art, but the company has added a hint of modern technology to make the plants float with the power of magnetic levitation. Air Bonsai consists of two elements, the floating plant or living moss ball, which contains a built-in magnet and can weigh a maximum of 250 grams and be up to 6 centimeters in diameter, while the energy base also has a built-in magnet and runs on an AC adapter. The two magnets have the same poles, with the repelling force carefully balanced so that the bonsai trees float on an invisible cushion of magnetic energy. On crowdfunding site Kickstarter, Hoshinshu has received more than $500,000 for the project after launching with an initial goal of just $80,000 in January. The startup aims to ship its products this August, according to its website. Indian authorities last Friday evening buried a 9-meter-long bride's whale, which washed ashore dead on Juhu Beach in western Mumbai city. The dead mammal, weighing around 20 tons, was first noticed by lifeguards at the beach on Thursday, January 28th. 2 cranes were deployed to lift the decomposing whale into a pit dug into the sand. Assistant Forest Conservator Makarand B. Gode said the whale would later be disinterred to ascertain the cause of its death. He said the whale was fully decomposed and had been decomposing for the last 4 days. It had become a health hazard for people, so they had to bury it, but he said they would later take the skeleton out. The animal had injury marks on its back. Earlier this month, at least 50 baleen whales were washed ashore in the southern Indian port city of Tuticorin. Protesters staged a demonstration on January 31st against the construction of the country's first metro train line, arguing that the project put their homes at risk and endangered historical buildings. Demonstrators, men and women, marched through Lahore, chanting slogans and holding placards, as construction was underway across the city. Lahore High Court issued an order late on January 28th to stop the construction work, suspending all work within 61 meters of 11 buildings of historical value, said Azhar Siddiq, a lawyer and petitioner in the case. Siddiq said he filed a petition to save 26 heritage sites from construction work. Buildings deemed at risk include the Mughal Fort and Shalimar Gardens complex, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a 19th century British-built church, and the Victorian-era General Post Office. The United Nations last week called on Pakistan's government to halt work on the line. It said construction, which started last year, had led to forced evictions and threatened a large number of Lahore's protected heritage sites, historical buildings and minority places of worship. Independent experts were puzzled as to why alternative, less damaging routes were not considered, the UN said. On Sunday, construction work appeared to be halted around some of Lahore's historical buildings, but continued in other areas of the city. 6 major political parties held a meeting in Lahore on January 30th, which concluded with them opposing the project. Mahmood Ur Rashid, the leader of the opposition of the Punjab Assembly, said the people were being ignored and their property disregarded, calling it an economic genocide for the people, snatching away their shelters and their employment. Part funded by China, the Lahore Metro is a rapid mass transit system that the government hopes will ease travel in the fast-growing city, Pakistan's second largest. Public transport remains woefully inadequate across most Pakistani cities, and a rapidly urbanizing population has left roads choked with traffic, slowing travel times. Severe weather fronts damaged several regions across Australia, including large bushfires that burned through several parts of the state of Tasmania on January 30th. Some 80 wildfires have been burning mostly in the west of the island state since lightning struck on January 13th, destroying more than 72,000 hectares of bushland, including 1,000-year-old trees in World Heritage listed forests. Tasmanian firefighters were joined by support teams from other states and from New Zealand as they tackled the blazes in remote terrain. Up to 40 fire crews worked to contain fires that burned through large areas of the state's far northwest and forced shack owners to take refuge on beaches. Rain falling on the area last Saturday failed to have any impact on the fires. Police advised residents in Arthur River and Nelson Bay in the state that at least one major road was closed to all traffic except emergency service vehicles. In New South Wales, authorities worked to clean up on January 31st after wild storms lashed the city, leaving more than 70,000 customers without electricity. Other parts of Australia have been suffering severe storms. In Western Sydney, 200 people were evacuated after storms blew the roof off a 4-level unit block. The State Emergency Service said it had received about 1,000 calls for help. A tropical cyclone that crossed Australia's northwest coast early on January 31st weakened, although several small inland communities were on red alert and the risk of heavy swells, flooding and storm surges remained.
Right, you can see it all.
Okay.
And that's it for this week's Primetime Asia. We'll be back the same time next week with more news and features from the Asia-Pacific region. For more news, you can visit our website at www.rtbnews.rtb.gov.bn. I'm Izzatul Parika Haji Adnan, wishing you a good week ahead and good night. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.